I like to go back to the whys. Why did we buy this theater? Why did we decide that this was the project? And it comes back to the point of where this theater was built, the heart of downtown. It has served as a social and economic hub for decades and decades. This whole thing is really transformational, because you go back into a different time, because you're in an older theater. You're watching an older movie. You're watching it on 35 millimeter film. And so people think differently. It's back to a simpler time. They relax, they enjoy. And that's what I love about it, because you just see on their faces. I remember when I saw this when I was a kid, but there's so many experiences like that. Their first date, first kiss, all of those kinds of things. I love to see the smiles, the expressions, the emotions that these people have watching this movie. And it takes a place like the Artcraft to bring out those kinds of emotions. This is how movies were supposed to be seen, that our stars were bigger than life because they were on a screen like this. And so our heroes and our villains and the greats and the bads all happened here in front of us, and you're transported to a different time. And so the Artcraft has been that vessel, if you will, to bring those people in, to have those kinds of experiences, to feel that energy that all of them combine. What I want to see is that when a patron walks through the doors, that their jaw drops immediately, that this maybe reminds them of the theater that they used to have in their hometown. And so the opportunity to entertain that patron is what is the why for me. I want them to understand that it's more than a movie, it's more of an event. And that what we're trying to do is bring you back in time with a classic movie here in a classic setting with the Artcraft Theaters. So the theater was built in 1922, and they had the grand opening on November 1st. But just like all of the other theater circuits, people traveled during the vaudeville days, and this was a vaudeville house and silent movie theater. And so they would travel from theater to theater, from town to town. And Franklin had an opera house at that time, but they didn't have a full-blown movie house. And so a number of stakeholders got together and decided they were going to build a theater here in Franklin. But they held political rallies here. They had cooking classes here in the 20s and 30s. In the 40s, people came here to watch newsreels of footage from the war front. Basketball was so huge in Indiana, and especially in Franklin. This theater would actually show basketball scores while the movie was going on to keep you informed of what was happening. Also in the 40s and 50s and later on, a lot of the high schools did not have stages. And so a lot of their plays happened here at the theater beginning, from day one. Franklin College also had their plays and performances here. They would have graduation ceremonies, they would have dance recitals, and so it was really a community theater. And then again, around 1952, they decided that they just weren't going to do vaudeville anymore, so they took the orchestra pit and they filled it with sand and put concrete over it. So I guess vaudeville died underneath there. Then they mounted the screen in the center of the stage, and so that wasn't going to move anymore, so that was going to limit what live events you had here. And so the theater became more of a movie theater.
Lucky was half right at that. About it being an inside job. He made a bad mistake accusing Hamilton.
And a lot of the movies that they showed here were cowboy westerns. And back in 1940, when Life magazine came to town and chronicled what people did as they came into town, and the Artcraft was one of those pieces. And so the boys got dropped off from the Dunn family here to watch Pals of the Silver Sage. And so they were actually in the very front row, the first time they had ever been in the front row of a movie. And so the photographer, Mr. Hoffman, got their pictures before the movie started of them, and you know, the kids have got their socks with the stripes on it, and they're all sitting there patiently waiting to watch this great movie. And then they find out, oh, we're gonna go do some more shooting around town, so they never got to actually watch the movie. But the Artcraft Theatre played large in Life magazine as again, being the quintessential small town in America, and to see how many people would pack this theater to see great cowboy western movies. The Artcraft had been run for over 7 decades by the Rembush family, and it was their flagship theater of all of the various theaters they owned, and they at that time owned about 17 different theaters. And so a multiplex was threatening to come into town, and so people were starting to leave downtown to go to these multiplexes, which of course put a strain on the downtown theaters, and the Artcraft being one of those. If you are a single screen theater, you are up against a multiplex that can show 8 different movies at different times, and you would get that one of those same movies, but once everybody in Franklin had seen that movie for a week, there was no sense in going back. And so those run times did not make sense with the Artcraft Theatre. And the Rembush family did not want to see that happen, so they were going to build their own multiplex and then also operate the Artcraft Theatre. Well, once they got the multiplex going with its many screens, they couldn't also operate the Artcraft. So it was put up for sale in July of 2000. And then Bob and Lexi Schofield purchased it and began using this place where you could have multiple venues of bands or battle of the bands and different things here. But again, when they started having the various concerts and things, the vibration from all of that music and stuff caused more of the ceiling to collapse. And at a certain point in time, the building was condemned by the city of Franklin. So Franklin Heritage was still working on restoring historic houses and moving right along 1 or 2 houses a year. And that was a pretty good pace for us. But then we noticed that the Artcraft Theatre had been kind of getting in disrepair. And then all of a sudden, a ceiling collapsed in the Artcraft. And so that made headlines. And we thought perhaps there's a way that we could help with this property. And in between that time, they got that fixed, and we decided we needed to get more involved as a preservation group. And so in 2001, we began leasing the Artcraft Theatre for 1 night a month on a Thursday night for what we referred to as classic cinema on a classic screen. The whole idea was to be able to keep the 35 millimeter projectors here so that, you know, they wouldn't be taken out and this place no longer become an operating theater. So we worked out a deal where we would pay $500 a month. We got Thursday night because Friday and Saturday they were still having shows here. And so we put together a schedule of movies. We found our projectionist, Mr. Steve Blair, and we said, we're going to take a run at this. Well, we had put together a schedule of about 12 shows. We waited till the next month, and the next movie got even more people, and it kept snowballing. And we said, this is something that we can continue to keep going. Maybe there's a business plan here. And as it turned out, we were then able to rent it Thursday and Friday night, and then later on Friday and Saturday night. And then we had done enough movies and enough investigation on the property to make a decision to say, okay, we're gonna make an offer on the building. On April 20th of 2004, we paid $175,000 to purchase this theater. And at that point in time, nobody was buying historic theaters in Indiana or elsewhere. And that's how we began. But our vision was that, you know, we're historic preservationists. We don't necessarily know movies, but we know buildings. And if nothing else, even if we lasted 2 or 3 years, this would give this building more life for somebody else to come in and fix it up. And unfortunately, we have not had to do that. So this whole idea of restoring this theater, understanding it and fixing it back up was again crucial to the revitalization of the downtown. And I saw it as that. I don't know if other folks at that time did. I would imagine most of the bankers, most of the financial people thought this is a huge, huge risk, and I don't see this being successful. But when people tell me I can't do it or it's not going to happen, that just fires me up more. We've put in a little more than $2 million in the restoration already, and I think it's the best project that Franklin Heritage could have ever tackled.
Amen. Franklin Heritage, thank God, stepped in and was able to purchase the art craft, and has just done a beautiful job with the theater and keeping things up and doing a lot of the work that needed to be done that I certainly could not, was outside of any scope of financial help that I could give or that Bob Schofield could give.